Go to the cloud and maybe leave.
Yeah.
All right, here's Josh. All right, so here we go. So welcome to the meeting. My name is Tom Coleman. I'm new. Please announce yourself, put your name in the chat and the city that you're in, please, so everybody knows who's here today. A couple of announcements. I'm the new chapter chair and originally from Boston, been in Chicagoland in the city of Naperville since 1995. Got my leadership training in 2020. Been in the chapter a while, so let's move on. So I want to give great thanks to Cynthia, who's led the chapter for, was it 2 years, Cynthia?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 years. So I just want to, thank you, Cynthia, and also some of the members of the last year's lead team are here as well. Not only Cynthia, but Pam, of course, Josh, Jane, Jennifer, Danica, Link, Natalie, Peter, and Ray. Put a lot of time in last year, and that's fantastic. So thank you, previous team. All right, so I want to congratulate the new lead team and make sure everybody knows who they are. We've got Bruce Mainzer, who's our new chapter vice chair. We've never had that before, so that's something new, and that's going to be very important with the things we're doing. Pam Tate as campaigns chair again, with John Cavalunas as vice chair. We've got Cynthia Linton as our communications chair and Jane Goldberg as vice chair. We've got public education chair, Scott Reed, with Patty Iverson as vice chair. We have our membership chair is open currently right now. So anybody who's, listening to us today, by all means, send me an email or whatever, making sure that, you put your name in. If you just want to be on the team of 2 or 3, 4, 5 people on memberships, it's so important to engagement. We give thanks to Molly Mahoney, though, for covering membership for us now and doing, basic actions, which is very important. Christina Murphy is at-large chair for her focus would be buildings and suburban climate action. Danica Sun, at-large chair for youth action. Natalie Lichtenberg, Zero Waste Warriors, at-large chair, and Karen Data, who will be speaking tonight, trees and nature-based solutions. So yay for the election. All right, so we talk about climate and, we know that it's an existential threat, but a lot of people don't know that if you look at the latest IPCC report, we only have like 2.5 years in order to be able to really start to turn, to bend the curve, so to speak, on emissions. If we're going to hit, 2 degrees Celsius, let alone 1.5. And so we're really kind of out of time. We got to bend the curve. We got to cut emissions in half by 2030 and certainly net zero by 2050. And along this line, National Climate Reality Project National, the Al Gore organization, has made it clear to us in something they call the Our Climate Moment. And our focus, as directed by National, is in the area of clean energy, 100% clean energy. And we're going to form a new team. So anybody interested in clean energy, maybe you have some experience with solar or want to learn about solar, things like that, you just let Pam or myself know so that we can form a team. And we also need a leader. Clean transportation, we have 2 teams working on that right now. I'll list them in a minute. Building decarbonization is our climate moment. And Ithaca, New York is a good example of great stuff going on. Suburban climate action and the city of Chicago are doing things in that regard. And then infrastructure investment, and AKA the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Obviously trying to focus and making sure the money, a tremendous amount of money is gone to the proper thing. So with that said, I'll just go down the list of our teams to make sure you know that they exist. I put a text file in the chat which lists them, so you have that. All you have to do is pull that down. You don't have to write all this down. But here's a list. Contact Pam Tate or myself or one of the team leaders directly. If you're interested in joining a team, we've got an energy solar team, which I mentioned that we're going to start up. A regenerative agriculture, very important, with Don Vaselli. Defund, divest, and desponsor with Jeff Green. We've got public education with Scott Reed. Suburban Climate Action with Christina Murphy and Molly Mahoney. Chicago Climate Action with Shantae Edwards and Florida. Gundascara, if I pronounced that wrong, I'm sorry. Tree and Nature-Based Solutions from Karen, and she'll be speaking tonight. Youth Coalition with Danica Sun, Zero Waste Warriors with Natalie Lichtenberg, along with Plastics. The EV Team, which is something I'm still leading. Electrifying Public Transit with Pam Tate and Kim Stone. And we have leadership in terms of membership and communications. We could always use help in those areas. A lot of people don't know we have a chapter book club, and it meets every 6 weeks. The book we're reading right now is How to Save Our Planet, Mark Maslin. So if you're interested, pick it up. It's a pretty short book. And then finally, we had environmental justice last year. We don't have an active team now, but it's something obviously it's extremely important, climate justice, environmental justice. So that's important. I just also want to point out quickly, Climate Reality National is conducting leadership training June 11th in Las Vegas. So if you haven't been trained by Al Gore and his team, you want to sign up for that immediately. And if you have been trained and you want to be a mentor, they're also interested in getting help from mentors. So right now I want to turn this over to a brief message from Natalie. Go ahead, Natalie. You wanted to say something about Great Lakes and so forth. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I'm going to be speaking at a, let me get the chat open. That's not it. I'm going to be speaking at an event called the Great Lakes Symposium, and that's going to be June 1st to June 4th. So I was going to put that in the chat box in case anybody else wants to go. The organizer said he would get a bus for us. He would charter a bus if there were enough people from the Chicagoland area going. So if you check out the link, you can always email me and let me know that you're interested in going, and I'll help organize everyone going.
Super.
So it's all about Great Lakes and Great Lakes pollution. And then I also wanted to plug our tweet storm, which is going to happen on Earth Day tomorrow. Just copying the link real fast. Please try fast. Yeah. So this is a link to our actual tweet that we want to tweet on Earth Day tomorrow. We don't really have a specific time, but it will, I'm going to shoot for lunchtime, but we just want to create as many posts similar with this post that we have here on our Facebook page. And that's it.
All right. Thank you, Natalie. Is Danica here? She had an announcement she wanted to make. Maybe she's not here. I know that there was a Youth Earth Day strike.
I know, Tom, that it starts at 2:30 tomorrow at Buckingham Fountain.
Okay, the last message I have is our next member meeting is on May 19th at 6 o'clock. Come on and join us. We're going to be talking about electric vehicles and the great work that's being done by the Electrifying Public Transit Team, Pace Bus, the CTA, and the RTA. So that'll be an exciting meeting. And the following meeting, we're still talking about that. It might be regenerative agriculture. But anyway, on to you, Pam. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just the introducer here. I'm really excited, and I'm just looking forward to this panel. And I just want to say that I'm a proud member of the Board of Directors of American Forests, and they've done such wonderful work nationally that I wanted everyone here to know about their work. But there's also fantastic work going on locally. So Karen and I got together and we made a decision that we would bring them in with a national perspective, and then we would talk about the region, the Chicago Regional Tree Initiative, which Karen will introduce, and then we would move to the city of Chicago itself. And so we're hoping that following this, that some of you will become more interested and perhaps join our trees team, which Karen chairs. And if you are interested, just put your email in the chat and say that you're interested in joining, and we will grab you right up because we have a lot of work to do and we need more of you involved in our trees team. So with that, Karen, you're going to moderate this panel, so take it away.
Excuse me, everybody should meet if they're not talking. I should have said that. Sorry. Go ahead, Karen.
I was going to say that too, but even though I didn't mute, so my bad. I wanted to just say a very warm welcome and thank you to our three panelists. I feel we're incredibly privileged and so lucky to have all of you joining our meeting today and talking about trees and tree equity. There's a lot of knowledge in these three individuals, and I am just so appreciative. And I think we'll have a very wonderful, rich evening together. I'm going to introduce our three panelists first, and we're going to start kind of nationally and then go regional and then go local. So Molly Henry is the Director of Climate and Health and in Urban Forestry for American Forests. That's a national not-for-profit dedicated to protecting and restoring healthy forest ecosystems. And she helps to develop.
No, actually, it's not.
What? Oops. She helps to develop and implement climate and health tools and resources for various cities and regions. So Molly, welcome and thank you for coming today. Then we have Lydia Scott, the Director of the Chicago Regional Tree Initiative. That's a coalition of organizations that are working across the Chicago metro area. And it was founded by Mortem Arboretum. And CRTI's mission is to improve the health, diversity, and equitable distribution of urban forests. So I think we're so lucky to have Lydia here with us. And then our final panelist is Raed Mansour. I don't know how I did on your last name. I hope I did the first one right. And Raed is the Director of Environmental Innovations at the Chicago Department of Public Health. And he's developed the tree equity tool there. He also coordinates the tree equity working group. He serves as an open lands board of directors. He's also on the Executive Advisory Council for CRTI and the Metropolitan Agency for Planning and Climate Committee. So welcome to all three of you. We're so pleased to have you here. And each of you has the ability to share your screens. So Molly, we're going to start with you.
Hey, thank you so much, Karen, for the introduction. And hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm so happy to be here with you all and talk to you a little bit about tree equity and to reinforce Pam's words, hoping to get you a little bit more passionate about trees and thinking about environmental justice. So I'm going to share my screen. And I know I have a short amount of time with you all. So I had a really hard time picking and choosing what I was going to focus on. But what I came up with is our tree equity score, which you all may or may not have heard of. But we're going to talk a little bit about what is tree equity score and how you can actually look at your own tree equity score right where you live. And so I'm just going to start the presentation. And I'll mention, I put it in the chat, but I'm based in Rhode Island. So I work remotely, but our offices are based in Washington, D.C. That's where we're headquartered. Our mission, which is to create healthy and resilient forests, and we work in both cities and wilderness to deliver the benefits for climate, people, water, and wildlife. And we do this through forestry innovation. So one of those innovations we're going to talk about today is tree equity score, place-based partnerships. So we work really closely with local partners and then to plant and restore forests and create a movement. So our vision is really focused on bringing all of the benefits that we know trees have to every single person so that it can be equitable and available to everybody on this planet, including creatures, not human beings, but human beings mostly is what we're focused on today. We're actually the oldest national nonprofit conservation in the United States. We're almost 150 years old, which is pretty impressive. And we actually helped start the US Forest Service as well. So a lot of rich history there and something to be really proud of in representing the organization today. We have 4 main topics that we focus on: climate change, social equity, water, and wildlife. And I would say climate change and social equity are going to be the topics that we're really honing in on a bit more today for the presentation. And a little bit more about American Forests. We have 2 main programs. One is tree equity, which is our urban forestry department. And then we have Resilient Forests, which works on natural landscapes and larger rural landscapes. So many of you are probably familiar with the benefits of trees, and there are many. So there are the benefits of cooling neighborhoods by as much as 10 degrees. So the difference between one block being 90 degrees and the next one over feeling like 100 degrees is pretty significant. We also know that trees help capture pollution from fine particulate matter. We know that trees help in reducing mental stress and helping to really just overall increase well-being and promoting exercise. There's been some studies that even suggest that for outdoor recreation, trees are one of the most important components to getting people outside and walking and moving. And then one of the big ones, since we're talking about climate change, is that trees are a nature-based solution. So they capture carbon dioxide while bringing all of these many benefits that I don't even have time to go into, and I bet you all have experienced it firsthand in one way or another. But the issue is that not everybody is receiving the benefits that trees provide. And that is why American Forests really started focusing, and we focused on this many years ago, on tree equity. And in doing our focus on tree equity, we developed what is called the Tree Equity Score. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it today. But just moving back a few steps is that, I mentioned that not everybody is receiving the benefits of trees. So we know that this inequity has some pretty significant consequences. If you look at the map on the left of tree canopy and the one on the right, you can notice that the tree canopy is denser in darker areas on the green map, and then the reverse for temperature, right? So we have cooler temperatures where it's lighter over on the right, where the more canopy was, and then we have warmer temperatures where tree canopy is lacking. And so we also see here that this has major implications for the people that are living there. In particular, people of color and people in poverty see significantly less trees than those wealthier, whiter neighborhoods. And this is no accident either. I mean, we can really link it to the legacy of redlining and other racial discriminatory practices. And that is something that American Forest has gone all in on to try to address. And that is why we created Tree Equity Score as a way to measure and prioritize areas that absolutely should be first in line to get trees. And so a little bit of how it works. I'm not going to geek out too much. There's a whole methodology page, but I'll just give you the quick kind of quick overview of it. So if you take the existing tree canopy, which we have data for actually for the entire country, and that is on our national tool. And then you look at population density, that kind of shows us what's possible in a neighborhood. And then we look at creating a goal. So in areas that are historically forested, a place like Chicago, you would have a 40% goal that you start with. And then we look at what the gap is based on the existing canopy, and then we adjust the goal based on population density to make it more realistic and feasible. So then we combine that with what we have here as a priority index, and it's 6 equally weighted characteristics. So this is income, unemployment, surface temperature, race, age, and the age is really looking at youth and seniors. They're the most vulnerable to climate change. And then health, we have a health index that we have from CDC places that includes respiratory, cardiac, and mental health.
Excuse me, Molly.
Yeah.
Are you advancing the slides? Because I don't see them advancing.
Is nobody else seeing it?
I'm just seeing the first
I see
slide.
him advancing, yeah.
I'm
Okay.
seeing it.
Oh, are
Yeah.
you seeing it advancing? Okay, it
Yeah.
must be just me. Okay, sorry.
Thank you
about
for
that,
speaking
Molly.
up though, because I would
Yeah.
feel really embarrassed if
Yeah,
it just kept
that's
going.
okay. Move on.
Maybe it's frozen, but I can also send the presentation afterward too, if anybody's interested in looking at these. So yeah, so we combine all that and we add it up and we get a normalized score between 0 and 100. So the closer you are to 100, the closer you are to achieving true equity. Anything below that is not achieving true equity, but the lower the score, the higher the priority. So we've actually done this all throughout the nation in our urbanized areas. So that's cities that are 50,000 or higher. And we have the score, and I just kind of like break it down really quickly for you. So if you look at the tree equity score here, where it's a little bit more orange, you have 60 versus a tree equity score of 55. So we know that the 55 is going to be prioritized over a 60 or over an 89. But the priority index that I talked about, those 6 equally weighted characteristics, the closer it is to 1, so like that, I'm sorry, the 0.58 here versus 0.72, the more of a priority it is. So that bumps it up more. So that is why, I'm sorry, I said that in reverse. I always do this. The closer it is to, or the lower the number for the priority index, that then makes it so your tree canopy gap, I'm so sorry. My dog is running around and I got completely derailed and she like came up and was in my hand. So what I'm trying to say is that the score is going to be affected by the priority index. So you're going to have a higher priority than for those that have a priority index that is lower, if that makes sense. I'm probably getting too much into the weeds, but I want to give you all just a little bit of a sense. So we have 2 applications. One is our national application, which is completely free and available. You can go on and look at it right now. I have this URL down at the bottom, so you can check that out. And so that is really creating a national standard that we want to have for all cities to be able to access and to look at how to prioritize trees. And then also we have things like a municipal report that can look at the different relationships between different neighborhoods. And then also there's a congressional district report that gets generated too. So if you wanted to look at your specific district, you can actually use as an advocacy tool and just kind of narrows down on that. The tree equity score analyzer, which we did not talk about today, is our deep dive tool that actually goes all the way down to the parcel scale. And you can do a scenario planning where you can plug in trees to a specific location. It'll actually generate the ecosystem services for the project. So both of these tools are very similar, but the tree equity score analyzer is just a little bit of a deeper dive and a little bit more interactive. And that one is at cost. And we did one in Rhode Island right here where I live. This is where we had the pilot project for that, and we're developing many more. I think we have a list of 10 other tree equity score analyzers that we're doing. So I will just leave you with this URL here again. I really recommend, if you are interested in checking out treeequityscore.org, see what your tree equity score is, where you live, and start to get an understanding of how to use the tool. I didn't have time to demo it today, but it's definitely something really fun to explore. And I kind of already mentioned this, but yeah, we have many TESSAs. It's what we call a tree equity score analyzer that we're developing. And we're actually gonna do tree equity score in some international locations as well. And I'm going to be adding a few other things like a scenario decision support model. And then we're going to have some really interesting stuff around playing with storytelling within our mapping too, and doing some data stories. So we're really giving some voice to the people that are affected most by tree inequity. So that's my contact information. I apologize for getting a little distracted with my dog, but thank you so much for having me. And I hope that you all, can get a chance to check out your score and maybe join Pam on her tree efforts.
And here we have Lydia from Chicago Regional Tree Initiative.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Molly. That was very interesting. We've talked to some of your folks at American Forest over the years about this product and have developed some resources here that are very similar. So I'll be going through that a little bit, but American Forest really does phenomenal work across the US, and we've worked with them here. As Karen mentioned, our mission is to improve the health of the urban canopy, and our focus obviously is on equitable distribution. So you're going to hear this theme come across both with Molly, with me, and I'm sure with Red as well. In 2019, we developed a master plan for the Chicago region, and it was based on a census that the Arboretum completed in 2010 with the goal to improve the health of the urban forest, because we saw at that time that it was in a pretty sad state of transition. And we established 4 goals. One is to inspire people to value trees, because if we don't have people on board and advocating for our trees, we can't get ahead. We need to increase the region's canopy, because we know of the substantial benefits that it provides. We want to reduce threats to that canopy, because, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. And then we're working to enhance oak ecosystems, because those are our native heritage and we're losing them. If you want to read more about the master plan, the link for that is listed on the bottom of this slide. So we know that urban trees are critical to quality of life, and Molly talked quite a bit about that. And she also talked about that they're not equitably distributed, and the Chicago region is no exception to that rule. And she talked a lot about the benefits. I'm not going to go through right now just to save some time, but there are a lot of benefits that our canopy provides, and that's the reason that we focus on it. But one of the things that's really important to know is that bigger, more mature trees provide bigger benefits. And 73% of all of our trees in the Chicago region are less than 6 inches in diameter. And I'll talk a little bit about more why that is in just a minute, but it's a pretty clear indication that we've got some issues here. As I mentioned, in 2010, we did a census, but we recensused again in 2020. And our canopy went up, which was surprising to us. It went from 21% to 23% for the region. However, the city of Chicago and McHenry County both went down. And so we really want to focus on why those areas are going down and how we can help them improve their canopies overall. And then here are just some of the main benefits that this canopy in our region is providing to us. And again, if you want details on the census, you can go to this link at the bottom of the page to read more about the census that was completed. And that was done over the 7-county Chicago metro area and covers about 284 municipalities, as well as the city of Chicago. So we set a goal to increase our canopy by 4%. And I know Molly was saying, 40% is sort of the premium goal, and we would love to get that. But we know that with even just increasing our canopy by 4%, that would require that we plant 22 million trees in the next 30 years by 2050. And so that's a pretty significant investment for us overall. And so we're really focused on at least getting 4%. If we can get higher than that, would be great. But we know we also need to work on prioritizing where we work, because there's so much work to be done. And our canopy in the region ranges between 3% and 66%. So there's a pretty broad spread of canopy. One of our biggest challenges is looking at catastrophic loss. In 2010, when we did the census, we found that we had 13 million ash trees. And since 2010, we've lost 10 million of those ash trees. We have 3 million that are left that are either being treated or in a state of decline. And so we want to reduce further future challenges for that. And you can see this is the species distribution in this pie chart on the right-hand side. You'll see European buckthorn is 36% of all of our trees. That's an invasive species. Honeysuckle, there are 2 species of honeysuckle on here. Those are both also invasive species. About 45% of our canopy in the Chicago region are invasive species. So it's a pretty significant challenge that we need to overcome in dealing with those. And then when you look at the species that are listed here, we really have a long way to go to improving the species composition in order to improve the health of the forest for the long term. So in 2010, with help from American Forests, I might add, we were able to do the LiDAR analysis for the Chicago region, and it measures height of trees. And so you'll see that the lighter colors at the top are on this little bar chart on the right-hand side. The lighter the color, the taller the tree, and you can tell, you can sort of figure out that buildings are those squarish surfaces, and the fluffy things are actually the trees. And so you can see that the yellow, we have some pretty high tall trees. And then you look at 2017, you see a shift in the canopy. So let me show you that again. So that's 2010, and that's 2017. So you can see we've lost quite a bit. And this image shows you the combined of the 2010 and the 2017 imagery. So the purple that you see are the trees that were here in 2010 and are still here today. The orange are the trees that we've lost in the last 7 to 10 years. And then the green color that's on there are the small little trees that have been used to replace, that have been planted to replace those larger trees that are missing in our landscape. Many of those obviously are going to be ash trees because we know we lost a lot of those. But if you look at that vertical line down the middle of the screen, you'll see that green line that sort of forms along the edge of that purple line. That is most likely invasive species buckthorn, because it's a smaller stature tree. So we have a number of challenges, not just with tree losses, but what's coming in to replace those trees. So how do we prioritize where we work? So we've done something similar to what American Forest has done, where we've identified vulnerable populations. We've looked at heat, air quality, flooding, and tree canopy. And we have those in an interactive map on our website. Our webpage. So if you look at this, the link is in the lower left-hand corner there. You can click on any area of the map and it will go by census tract. It will show you the different levels of these different variables that I mentioned on the left-hand side here. And you can see how your community compares to other communities. We've also developed another piece, which I think is very informative and very helpful, especially at the community scale. And it is where we've developed canopy summary packets. So if you go to this map, which is also on our website, and you click on anything, I clicked on Addison, for instance, here. And you look down, it says Addison has a canopy cover of 18%, impervious surface 43%, the benefits carbon stored. But that little line that says more information, if you click on more information, it takes you to a canopy summary packet for every municipality, each of the 50 Chicago wards across the 7-county metro area. And this packet explains what urban forestry or urban forest canopy is, why it's important. It explains how we've collected the data and some of the information that you'll find inside. And most of the packets have anywhere between 11 to 14 pages in them, and they're all very dense like this. And we typically sit down and meet with the elected officials of the community to walk through this with them and talk to them about how they need to establish strategies for managing their urban forest and find out what their needs are. And we'll talk more about that. But one of the pages that you'll see that comes up right away is on page 2 that talks about the canopy cover. So for this image in Addison, there we go, we got the cursor. So you see 37% is vegetation, 18% is trees, 0% bare soil, I'm sure there's a little more than that, and 2% water, 16% buildings, 10% roads and rail, and 17% impervious surface. But when you look at the potential plantable space, and those are those spaces which could be planted, that doesn't mean we want to plant them. I don't think we want to be putting trees in the middle of baseball diamonds and things like that. But there is potential to increase our canopy significantly in Addison, which would result in significantly more benefits for them. Another important thing that's in this packet explains to them what land use there is and where the most opportunity for planting is. So in the upper left-hand corner, it shows you the different land covers and land uses. And then on the lower right-hand side, it shows you where the greatest potential for planting is. And so for instance, in Addison, the largest land use is residential, and the area with the most potential is also residential, but it's followed by commercial and then by transit. So those are 3 areas within this village of Addison that they could actually focus more significantly on increasing their canopy and have a greater impact on some of those challenges that Molly talked about with heat, air quality, flooding, and those other issues. This is the canopy inventory for the village of Addison, and this is just their municipal property. We've done a number of inventories across the region at all land uses, but within their canopy packets, we just put the publicly owned trees that the community manages. And you can see maple here is 38% of all the canopy in Addison. And that's a really important alarm that should be going off in the heads of the folks in Addison, that if something comes through to kill maple trees, they will lose over a third of their canopy, which is quite a bit higher than even the ash challenge was, which was very expensive to replace. And so it helps them see, okay, maybe we should lay off planting maples for a little while and even back off on some honeysuckles and get some other species in our planting palette in order to reduce those threats. Then we give them a little information on 3 benefits that their trees provide and its value. And this is true for every municipality, again, in each of the wards within Chicago, that they can see some of the benefits that their trees provide. So that gives them some information about their canopy. But what we want to know is what's important to them, what it is that within their community that they want to focus on, especially now that they know some of the information about the benefits that their trees are providing and what the state of their urban forest is. And then we work to identify ways that we can help and support them in achieving those goals. So we get community engagement, feedback and input across a wide range of issues. We work to improve their policies. So for municipalities, this is particularly important because they set the rules and regulations for how trees are managed and protected in their community. And they also help set the standards for how who takes care of the trees and how it's done. And then also helping them identify opportunities for sound and proper development so that they're not taking out natural areas and things like that that could have a broader benefit to the community overall. I mentioned before that we're challenged with devastating impacts to our oak ecosystems. They're not regenerating in our region. And so we want to make everybody aware of that. Within each of the community packets, we have a map that shows the historic oak ecosystem boundaries across the region and within their community, and where they have opportunities to increase and connect that network of oak ecosystems in order to make it a more effective and more healthy functioning ecosystem. And then we provide a wide range of training opportunities from decision makers all the way down to volunteers across any number of organizations in our partnership, because we are a partnership. I see Al from Open Lands is on tonight. Tree Keepers provides a really exceptional program on training volunteers to be more actively involved in their community. And I think there are many similar types of examples across a range of levels of leadership as well. We also help landowners and managers identify opportunities for funding. We apply for funding that we work to share with communities and sub-grant out. We help promote grant writing workshops. We've developed a regional carbon program to help mitigate or help communities and landowners get their projects into carbon credits so that they can sell those on the open market and begin to recoup some of the benefits that or some of the costs associated with managing and caring for their trees. We have 2 projects that were sold just this year, and we're just now launching it's open to communities and forest preserves across the region. And then we've developed a corporate partnership program to try and align opportunities for corporations to participate and help support programs across our region. So I guess really it all boils down to it's a huge undertaking to improve the health of our urban forest, and it takes a wide range of partners, which we're lucky to have in our partnership, and working across the Chicago region to improve the health and equity of our urban forest. So thank you for the opportunity to talk with you.
Thank you, Lydia. That was jam-packed with a lot of information. I'm still digesting it. So, and now let's hear about kind of Chicago and more specific. So, Raed, we're going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. After Molly and Lydia, I don't think I have anything left to say, right? That's great. And Lydia is a longtime partner of the city of Chicago and just wonderful. Let me get this into presentation mode for you. All right. So when people approach me, they always ask why public health and trees. I think it's rare for a public health department to be involved in trees. But before we begin, this is a really great aerial picture from one of our city photographers of Garfield Park, if anyone recognizes the field house over there near the conservatory. The tool that we created was funded just upfront here by Bloomberg Philanthropies. They have a partnership for healthy cities in partnership with World Health Organization with Vital Strategies that really helped us implement the tool. Our partners at University of Chicago Center for Spatial Data Science and Healthy Regions and Policy Lab. So as you can tell, there's some partners here that are with us today viewing too, and visiting some of the communities in Chicago that when you do an aerial or you look at a map, it's hard to grasp the tree problems that we have across the city in some neighborhoods. So as you can see here, it's right near a bus terminal. I shouldn't say terminal, it's a coach company. And those buses are idling, and you can see that there's no trees or buffer or green infrastructure that is helping at least clear the air. So what are we going to do? I'm not going to even repeat everything Molly and Lydia just went over, but you know, trees are critical. As Molly showed and Lydia with their maps, trees are not equitably distributed for many reasons. People cut them down, disease, climate change, extreme weather, development. So conservation, preservation becomes a problem, but also replanting the ones that we've lost. We all know that it takes a long time for these new plantings to actually start becoming the workhorse we want them to. But to get them to that point of mature state where we can deliver the most benefits on them, that's also a key priority. One of the things, and Lydia touched upon, are the community stakeholders, you know, the advice and guidance of their hard work and experience. You know, we come in here and we're not going to start doing things differently and, you know, in the way that would, you know, distract from their mission and vision. So they really fill the gap of knowledge of how they view trees. It's cultural, it's religious, it's personal. And they are the most important part of this. After all the tools and all the data, you remove all that out of the way. It's always the community that's going to make this happen. So this is part of the reason with why public health. If anyone's not familiar, you can Google Healthy Chicago 2025. I could drop it in the chat later. The vision is a city where all people and all communities have power, are free from oppression, and are strengthened by equitable access to resources, environments, and opportunities that promote optimal health and well-being. And they had some foresight, and they used a tree as a perfect model to accomplish this, where you see the roots are public accountability and anti-racist and multicultural organizations, economic opportunity, fair laws and regulation, moving up to the trunk and hopefully getting clean air, vibrant neighborhoods, health and social services, housing, food access, public safety. Then we can increase life expectancy by decreasing chronic disease like asthma and heart disease, improve mental health, ending HIV, healthy parents and babies, violence-free and drug-free. So all this together, if you look at how this idea came about, this citywide, this Healthy Chicago is a citywide health improvement plan. So in order to accomplish this vision, to close the 9-year life expectancy gap between Black and white Chicagoans by addressing the root causes of health, all communities should have equitable access to environments that promote health and well-being. To further the health of the neighborhoods, we adopted a health in all policies. That means if it's roads, if it's parks, bike lanes, it's all about health. And we use this approach to work with communities to shape our social, economic, physical environment in a way that promotes health and racial equity. So urban forestry aligns with this vision. And it's the intersection between public health equity and tree equity. So we meet at that correlation between red line, PM 2.5, asthma, social vulnerability, economic hardship, flooding, et cetera, and low tree canopy. So it's almost like the fine print for lawyers here. I have to acknowledge, there's a lot of people acknowledge, but Lydia, who gave us this LiDAR data, this light detection and ranging data, which they paid for. And there's all the people that made it happen, University of Vermont, Morton Arboretum, US Forest Service, American Forests, et cetera. But yeah, CRTI was really instrumental in getting us this data. And you see those little green dots are like the polygons of trees. And we created a tool to complement on the ground community experience to prioritize planting in trees in areas of Chicago. So it's not number of trees, we're looking at the canopy and looking to see where we can prioritize new planting. Where should we be very aware where we need to preserve more of the trees that are in a low canopy community. And then we overlaid it with public health indicators. And it looks like this by census tract. This is just looking at the aggregated just tree data. You can move these sliders to 20% or less. And then this middle column is environmental data. This is particulate matter, air quality 2.5, flooding, which is from CMAP. All this is publicly available, by the way. The surface temperatures from NASA, asthmas from our Atlas from Healthy Chicago, social vulnerability index, that's CDC, traffic volume, that's IDOT, economic hardship. It's been around since 1976. You can calculate that. And then you can start prioritizing communities with highest social vulnerability, worst flooding, severe economic hardship, high traffic, high asthma, high surface temperature, and low tree canopy. It's not just number of trees. Taking this into account, you can start prioritizing the communities for where to plant, maintain, engage, and job training or workforce development. So this is kind of spread out through the city. As Lydia explained, the 16% in Chicago. The mayor has committed $46 million out of the $188 million in environmental justice and climate action budget. So to prioritize planting trees in historically marginalized and underserved communities. And this effort will also help meet the city's commitment to the Paris Climate Agreement, environmental justice, and equity. So our strategy, there's multiple arms here. In order to plant trees where they're most needed, using data in the community, we created this tree equity working group, which is over 70 members. And we meet monthly, and Karen and Pam, you are members as well. Not to call you out here. We work with this working group. Actually, we meet once a month, but a lot of the work happens in between the months and in between the meetings. And not only to locate and prioritize specific sites, but how to plan for using this a new way that we're going about planting trees, maintaining the trees, creating a robust training model of community partners, train the trainers, and creating soon to be newly minted community tree ambassadors, which will be able to survey locations and enter in 311 requests to get trees planted. And finally, our new campaign to engage residents is called Our Roots Chicago, and you'll be seeing it in Arbor Day. And I think I saw Al, my old teacher from Open Lands. I'm tree keeper 1548. That's my first tree I ever planted in Chicago as a tree keeper. It was a good day right off Damon, right, Al? I think so. That was in 2019 before the pandemic. So I'm a newly minted tree keeper. And that's it. Thank you.
well, that was wonderful and a lot of information to digest. I asked people to put questions in the chat and was so caught up in listening to all of you that I didn't look at the questions as they were getting populated. But I guess one thing I was wondering about is, I think that there's a lot of focus on trying to increase our tree canopy by planting new trees, planting the right trees, increasing native trees. And I'm just curious what you'd all recommend or how you think about ways to advocate for our older growth trees. I know in Chicago, we've been, the ash trees were really decimated across the country. How to think about whether to treat those trees or how, if that makes sense, but also just how to take care of the trees that we have so that they're not lost to things like road construction or sewer work or other things. So it's a very broad question, but I'm just curious who do you think, how would you recommend kind of approaching that? How do you all think about that in terms of protecting the tree urban canopy that we already have? I'll throw it out to any of the three of you.
Well, I can jump in. It's very critical that a community has strong tree preservation and protection ordinances, because that's where the buck stops. But we get calls every week from communities, residents and communities that are crying over the fact that their community is cutting down entire groves of trees to put in a new parking lot or something like that. And it's really out of our control at that point. That's why we really feel it's critical that we develop advocates within communities. That's why we inspire people to value trees, so that they can elect officials that will have the same values and the same understanding that they do, that trees are critical to our quality of life. It's important too to note that, you can cut down a 20-inch maple tree and it takes 23 2-inch maple trees to even begin to catch up to what the benefits of that 20-inch maple tree was. So while it seems like, it's easy to cut a tree down and replace it with another tree, the value and the benefits that tree provides are lost for, a generation or close to a generation. So it's critical that we preserve and protect those trees.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. I totally agree with Lydia. And one of the things that we're doing here in Chicago is, for lack of a better term, de-siloing all these different departments. We have the Department of Streets and Sanitation, and Department of Transportation, Department of Planning, Department of Water, Public Health. And sometimes one isn't talking to the other. I think it's good now to, as you can see with the working group and with the collaboration that we've been doing, at least everyone was in their lane doing their job. I think it's better that we all understand what each other's job is, and then we can better prevent some of the stuff that was happening. I think that's what Lydia was talking about with the advocates. They were the ones who were raising their voice and making noise. And then you'd hear about it later, or other departments would hear about it. So yeah, de-siloing is very important.
I would just jump in and echo Lydia on the tree preservation ordinance. And then in addition to that, I think that often the tree equity score tool that I kind of showed you all is seen as a planting tool, but it's also a preservation tool. The argument can be made that in removing trees, it will further create a deficit in a tree equity score. So looking at how a tree equity score is impacted by the removal of trees is just as important as it is for adding trees. So yeah, definitely wanted to make that point, because I think oftentimes it's just seen as, something for planting.
Karen, one thing I noticed in the chat as far as questions, and I know you have many others, but Don Viacelli asked specifically about forest or tree bills that are before Congress or at the state level that we need to support on a federal level or a state level to help in this mission. And I just wondered whether anybody, I know Molly, you said the policy team could assist, and that we should maybe be in touch with the policy team. And I think that would be a great idea, because our trees team is very interested in having an effect on public policy.
That would be great.
Okay, there were a couple of other things in the chat that I was tracking. One was from Link Cohen that asked, when you talk about plantable space, do you take into account the need to install solar panels?
Well, plantable space is areas where you can plant trees if that's your goal. Okay, so everyone is going to have a different idea or a different land management strategy in place for them. And so our goal is to get as many trees planted in as many locations that are appropriate as possible. But as I mentioned in my presentation, we're not recommending that trees be planted in the middle of ball diamonds, or if you have solar panels, obviously you don't want to have shade over them so that you're restricting the ability of those panels to get light. So you have to be very careful about, you know, where you select to plant, but we want to see trees planted in as many locations as possible.
Okay, thank you. There was also a question from Cynthia about,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, Karen.
I just wanted to go back to that first question for just a moment. I really appreciate the resource that your group might be able to provide for us, but I'm just curious for all of us just to be aware of, what do you think are the major legislative initiatives or policy efforts to advocate for trees, or points where at a federal or state or local level you would recommend kind of efforts to intervene? I know that's a very broad question, but I'm just curious if any kind of specific. I know the Farm Bill's coming up. I'm just kind of wondering.
I forget how sometimes they merge, sometimes the House, and then they change names at the Senate. I know that Senator Dick Durbin has one, and they even changed. He was calling it, it was the original name was the Conservation Corps he was going to create, but I think it's now the Climate Conservation Corps. Yeah, and so these bills are always changing, but I think it's in that bill, and I don't know, I forget the name of that bill that hasn't passed. I think it was held up. So supporting that one, I think everyone, and open lands, I think they may have more information on that. I think there is a push to ensure that. There's also, you know, something coming out. If you look at open lands, Al, I don't know if you have that link handy, but Cook County Cook County Forests has not raised their taxes since they got started. And so they don't get funded. They don't get funded by any other government agency. So there is going to be something on the ballot coming up in the next election it's like pennies to help maintain Cook County forests. And you know, we talk about Chicago, but you know, it's regional. If we're going to do anything about climate, you know, and air quality and surface heat. So I don't know if someone could look that up really quick, but it's on Open Land's website. There's a campaign there. Sign up to get information and vote for that. Those are the two I know that are locally and federal.
And that will be on the ballot in November?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the Cook County referendum, Cook County Forest Preserve District referendum. So yes.
I'm working on a link to share out. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Okay.
Al.
That's great. One other question, Karen, that was in the chat was from Cynthia. What are the native trees that should be planted in place of the invasive ones? And then she also wanted to know about whether the forest preserves in Cook County are counted in the tree census.
So yes, the forest preserve is counted in the tree census, and they're also measured with the LiDAR imagery. So yes, that's true for them. As far as species go, species are site specific. So I could tell you, you know, that there are bur oaks, white oaks, red oaks, black oaks. But for instance, black oaks need sandy soil. So you need to be looking at the soil conditions of where you are interested in planting and then make selections from there. We have on the Arboretum's website a tree selector tool that if you put in what your growing conditions are, if it's in front of your house, in the middle of a right of way, what the soil condition is like, if it's wet during the part of the year, if you're going to get salt from runoff from the roadway, you check off a series of boxes. And if you want native, you check off that box, and then it'll give you a series or suite of species to choose from. And that's to help folks who don't know what species to select.
Is that, you said that's on the Morton Arboretum website?
Yes, I'll put the link in the chat for you.
Okay, that's great.
And we can share the chat and PowerPoints with whoever would like, if you want to put your emails in. We have both climate reality and non-climate reality people here to share.
Yeah. There was also a question from Laura about public officials, whether there's any thought of creating a voter's guide just on tree policies for public officials, I guess. And Laura, if you want to say more about your question, please go ahead. Laura Sabransky.
Laura, are you still on here? I don't see you.
Yeah. I am here. I just was on mute.
Okay.
I think not a whole lot more to say beyond that. I mean, I used to work at League of Women Voters, and we put together a voter's guide back in the days when the Chicago Tribune would dedicate all kinds of, honestly, tree pulp to producing it. It was pages and pages long. It just struck me because when you said, you know, the time to, you know, prevent trees from being removed wholesale that, you know, people get upset about in their neighborhoods or, you know, where they live and work is to make sure you have a public official who wouldn't allow that to happen. And so then how do people know? You know, that's always the question. There's no way the average person could possibly know or even be thinking about that, really. I think it's an awareness tool too. You know, anytime you do a voter's guide on a specific issue or set of issues, and I know the Illinois Environmental Council has their ratings, but I believe that's kind of an overall for overall environmental policies. So that's, you know, just struck me to ask that question specifically in trees, related, obviously.
And that
sounds like, yeah, it sounds like we don't have anybody that has worked on that kind of development.
It might be an interesting thing for us as the tree team to look at about trying to compile something ahead of that referendum to just anyway to kind of do an advocacy tool.
Well, and even the voter's guide too, that used to just interview officials on you know, issues, on policies, on subjects. So maybe, and I am going to be on your tree team, right, Karen, coming up?
Yeah, you're invited. Yep.
Okay.
And everybody is invited to join the tree team, whoever would like to.
There was one other last question, I think, from in the chat, Karen, and that was, oh, no, there's two. One is from Don, and I know the answer to this one. He was wondering if American Forests is working on the 1 million tree initiative, and you are, right, Molly?
Yeah, I put it in the chat. We are co-leading that effort for the US chapter alongside the World Economic Forum. So that's another thing that can be done is as we plant trees to make pledges to contribute to that 1 trillion trees effort. And I can actually put a link to that.
That would be great. Tom, would you say more about your question, your policy question about remove 1 and plant 25?
Yeah, so, you know, I've heard this before, and I think I heard it again tonight. The fact that it takes something like 23 trees, you know, to make up for 1 tree that's being cut down, something along those lines. And so my question is, are we pushing, or should we be pushing policy that says, and I know this sounds maybe a little draconian, but you cut a tree down, not good, but you got to plant 25 trees, or maybe it should be 30 trees to make up for that. Or else you don't get to cut the tree down,
There are ordinances like that in the Chicago region. So, and we have ordinances in the Chicago region that cover trees on private property as well as public property.
Yeah.
Many of them require that inch for inch replacements. They require more than inch for certain species, like some of the native species are often have a higher replacement value. There is a guide from the International Society of Arboriculture that is an appraisal guide that gives you the value of that tree, so that if somebody drives a car into it, that they're assessed up to $10,000 or more, depending on that tree that they hit and the damage they caused to that tree. So there are policies in place, and it varies by community. You'll have some communities that don't have any restrictions on removing trees on either public or private property. So again, it goes back to the policy makers in your community.
So there's no state or, federal.
No.
Should we be having something like that at the state level?
Well, the state passed a regulation, I think 2 years ago now, called the Wrongful Tree Cutting Act. And it was developed because a tree company went in and harvested a bunch of trees on a piece of property that was not the property they were supposed to be harvesting from. And there wasn't a significant enough penalty for that kind of action. So the state has established a base level for wrongful tree cutting, but it's pretty low. And most municipalities that are home rule communities have established much stronger standards than that. So yes, there is something on the books for the state, but it is very low.
Yeah, and it would seem to me that, we got to be careful, because a tree could be diseased in a private residence, or I had to cut one down a decade ago because it was, dangerous to the house, and it was ready to fall onto my house. So, I can't be expected to plant 25 trees on my property. Where am I going to put them, But it seems to me in other areas, something like that should be possible.
Yeah, well, and what they do in those types of applications is you plant and replace the tree that you have there with the understanding that it's going to grow. The penalty dollars then are put into what's called a tree bank, and that money is used in the community to replace trees where they're needed.
Oh, right. That's good.
So they cover it that way.
Nice.
And
Okay.
for those who are interested, just to jump on Lydia's coattails, CRTI has been compiling model ordinances for people to be able to kind of use to take to their different areas and municipalities as models for tree protection ordinances. So they have some model areas that have good policies in place, so to speak, and then also just models for how to construct that for people that are interested. I don't have the link off the top of my, but I can add it to the information here. That's right, Lydia. That's one of the working groups.
Yes, we're just updating that now. So the new examples are not. We're having what's called an ordinance maker, so that the community can go through and select those components that they want to integrate into their ordinances. We have 3-tiered ordinances templates right now that are up on our website, and I'll put that in the chat for you so you can have those.
Thank you.
That would be great.
Something better is coming, though.
I'm curious because I seem to recall that there's no kind that we don't have any of those, and I don't know if this group knows. I don't think we have any of those ordinances in place in Chicago that in terms of protecting the Chicago proper. That might be an interesting thing to integrate it with the city.
And Molly has also put in the chat that so grab it if you're interested. If you want to see model tree ordinances, American Forests has a site called the Vibrant Cities Lab, and apparently there you would see some model city ordinances as well. So that's another resource, which gives us a lot of ideas about what our Chicago Trees group can pay attention to.
Also, to just go back to one of the things, is there a way to prioritize native species over other types of trees when we're in advocating for kind of how to choose trees, because I know that a huge issue is also just biodiversity and the way that the whole system interacts with one another, not just protecting trees for people, but for all sorts of other species that are local and in need.
Yeah, there are communities that do prioritize native species over non-native species. It's not as common as you would think, but there is that practice in place.
I know that we're, tell me, Tom, are we supposed to stop at 7:15?
Yes.
Technically,
Yes.
on the calendar, it goes to 7:30, but usually we try and stop at 7:15.
And I told people
Okay.
15, just.
Yeah,
Okay,
7:15.
so the question, I guess the question is, Karen, whether there are other things that people want to ask
Yeah.
before we wrap this up.
Right. That's right.
I had a
just
question.
noticed,
I did have a question in the chat. Can I ask my question real quick?
yeah, I think I missed it. Sorry.
Okay, it's and I guess it's about Chicago. So today I went into Lincoln Park. There is a new garden that has been planned and executed over the winter around the Keith Haring sculpture. Turns out they have laid in so much concrete. It was so dismaying. Here we are in 2022. We are in need of carbon capture, and they have covered ground with concrete. And it was really disappointing. And so we have very few little trees that have been planted, and I don't know what, and there's a lot of stones. I'm just curious, what is the system in place in the city where they are actually talking to people who are looking at best practices for the future of the way parks should be planted for carbon capture?
I hear you, Jane. And one of the things I did was to improve River Park, which our Army Corps kind of came in and removed a lot of trees, is to become a tree keeper. And I adopted that park. So that's number one. So you keep an eye on it and you become a resource for that park. That's number one. Number two, join your park advisory council. They have a lot of power on what goes on in that park. And I'm the stewardship chair of River Park advisory council, and trust me, there's people in the advisory council that sometimes they treat the park as a novelty, and it's not considered as an environmental, they don't look at what they do to the environment is actually doing something onto themselves. So they don't see it that way. They see it as an entertainment venue, an art venue, somewhere where to play music. They don't think of it as a place to, get respite, relax, enjoy nature, get away, decrease stress. So joining that, and you can join any PAC. There is no rule across the city of Chicago you can join River Park's PAC. It's open to all residents of Chicago. Join them. That's number two. Number three, there's a lot of organizations that take care of some of these parks that are in collaboration with the Chicago Parks District. The Nature Conservancy is one, the Trust for Public Land, Open Lands, so there's a lot of organizations that do work there, and conservation, Chicago Audubon Society, the Chicago Ornithological Society. I know you're talking about birds and talking about like all these different organizations. They actually need the trees and the green infrastructure for the birds to be there. So they have a vested interest and they plant heavily. They raise money for the parks to plant there. So joining these organizations kind of wakes up a lot of people that don't think anyone's noticing, like you did, Jane. So that's the number three. Number four, I can keep going. Number four, the Chicago Parks District is an agency of the city. So it's kind of, I don't know how interested everyone is about the legal structure of the city of Chicago. So if you think about it, departments are on one side, the agencies are kind of on the other. It's like CPS, CHA, or Chicago Parks. So even though we've talked to them and they're part of our working group and we want them to tree as well, their natural areas director is awesome. And I don't know if there's a natural area there. So it sounds like an art installation the pack, if there is a pack, they decided, let's do this. And sometimes they, you know, there was an uproar in Montrose Beach, in that really famous bird sanctuary. They put down asphalt and it flipped everyone out because they said, why didn't they choose stone or paver or wood? And the reason, after, you know, everyone talked to them, they said it was cost. So, you know, sometimes you look at the pack and say, or look at these organizations, how can you raise money and help before they just say, hey, no one's given us any advice, is we have to do this for whatever reason. I don't know what the reason they had there. Also, if you're interested and you have time, becoming a steward, a park steward, they have a training program on Chicago Parks District. You could look that up. They train you how to become a steward of that of that park. And then you basically gather volunteers and teams to plant or remove invasives, but also you get a voice into how the park is designed. So I think I tried to remember everything when you were rattling off. I apologize if that was too long of an answer.
Thank you. That was great.
Okay.
That was great.
You're welcome.
In the spirit of keeping to time, I do feel like we should wrap it up. I mean, I feel like this has been just such a wonderful and rich discussion. I really want to thank our three panelists and really thank everybody for being here tonight. If anybody's interested in joining the tree team, please let me know. And on behalf of the Chicago Climate Reality Chicago Metro Chapter, thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very
you
much.
very much.
So
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
just to make sure you all know, our next meeting is May 19th. So if you'd like to join us, it'll be electric vehicles. Thank you very much. And the lead team will have this on the agenda at our next meeting, which is coming up, and we'll talk about next steps. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
You all.
Night.
Night.